Ladies, gentlemen, and exiles of all ages, as you work your way through the campaign of Path of Exile 2, there are a ton of very important bosses. Some are more obvious or even tied to the campaign itself, but there are quite a few optional bosses, as well as just missable activities or side quests that you can easily just sort of walk past or ignore that actually give you permanent character upgrading boosts. The type of things that can make the game feel genuinely easier once you have them, depending on which one it is, of course, and the type of things where if you're getting walled by difficulty later on, it might be worth going back to see if you missed any of these important bonuses that you get for killing specific bosses your first time or doing these side activities. Most, but not all of them, are marked on your world map, and you can tell if you've done them or not, whether they are sort of brighter or if they're grayed out to indicate you finished them. If you look at the different zones, you can see them sort of surrounding it, but they will only tell you what they actually give you once you've already completed them. So hopefully this nice complete list tells you which ones you definitely want to seek out and helps you out a bit. Starting off then in Act 1, then and moving forward in progression order. In Clearfell, you want to find Bera of the Rotten Pack, optional cold damage witch boss in the second zone of the game entirely, and when you kill her, she drops an item that will give you 10% permanent cold resistance increase. You may feel like that's actually quite a lot given the cap to elemental resistances, but keep in mind that each progressive act you enter applies an elemental resistance penalty to you and lowers your resistances. So while this is absolutely useful and helpful, it's not like brokenly strong or anything. You want to get it though, because it really helps sort of alleviate the pressure of those increased resistance penalties. Next up then is within the hunting grounds zone further on within Act 1. This is where there's a ton of gorillas and poison thorn shooting crustaceans and roa running past. In one side of the zone, usually along the edges for this one, you can find the Crowbell boss. This boss has a couple sort of stages to the fight, essentially just having them move to a couple of different places, get some moveset adjustments, but follow them around until you kill them and they will drop a book that gives you 2 weapon set specialization points, which also equates to just gaining 2 bonus skill points permanently, whether you set them up to be used in a specific weapon set differently or not. After that, from the hunting grounds, you can find the Freythorn region. You'll get a side quest about this once you're nearby, if you find the ritual circle, or you can just go here regardless, and once in the zone, you have to interact and find the actual ritual circles themselves. After activating the final of the ritual circles within the zone, you will summon the King and the Miss boss. On the first kill that you get against him, he will drop you an item that gives you plus 30 maximum spirit. This is your first spirit increase, so it also unlocks persistent buff skills as a concept to begin with, so this is quite important to catch this one especially. Then we have a couple of things that aren't actually bosses but result in permanent upgrades nonetheless. Specifically, if you get Una's loot, which is marked on the map in Ogum Farmlands, you'll find it in a big circular hut with a checkpoint outside of it. You then bring this to Una back at the Clearfell encampment. You'll get another 2 weapon set passive skills, which again equates to 2 bonus passive points for the skill tree permanently. On a similar note, in Ogum Village, the next zone over, you can find smithing tools off in a corner of the zone, and then bring these back to Renly back in the encampment, and this will unlock the salvage bench, a relatively important part of the whole item loop within the game. As if you salvage items that have quality on them, you can get quality applying crafting materials to put on gear that you want it on, and if you salvage items that have sockets, you can get shards to work towards putting sockets in your own gear manually as well. So this is actually a very useful game function. The final permanent upgrade optional interaction in Act 1 then comes from a boss not even marked on your world map inside of Ogum Manor, the final zone for the act. Generally speaking, this seems to be found on the first floor, the one up at the top where you initially entered the zone, though I have no confirmation if this is 100% where you'll find him here. You will come across a very suspicious room though while you're looking around. It has a checkpoint nearby, and inside of it is an interactable plaque. Do this interaction and you will summon Candlemas the Living Flame. Kill this boss and he will drop an item that you can use to gain plus 20 maximum life permanently. That's Act 1 then, so now let's move on to Act 2. Once you reach the Trader's Pass zone, there is a boss within the further sections of the map, closer to the exit. It is optional, but there is a side quest that will lead you to it if you miss it, and this unlocks the Trial of the Sekimas. This in itself is not a permanent power increase, but the boss is optional, and the thing it unlocks is a really big deal, because completing the trial for the first time will give you your ascendancy and 2 ascendancy skill points to spend, so it's really worth mentioning to make sure that nobody misses it here, because it is technically not considered main story. After that, once you reach the Bone Pit zone, there is a random drop chance from all enemies to drop you the Sun Clan relic, which is a quest item that is very apparent once it is found. In the next zone along, then within the act, Keth Within this map, in a bit of a snake pit looking area that will generate somewhere on your map, you'll find Kabbalah the Constrictor Queen. Killing her gives you another weapon set specialization book, which is again the equivalent of 2 bonus passive points for the skill tree permanently. As well, you'll want to kill the general enemies within the zone of Keth itself to find the Kabbalah clan relic. This is the other half of the relic that we found in the previous zone. Then once you reach the Valley of the Titan zone, which is not long afterwards, within this map there will be a very notable altar somewhere along the side walls. If you have both of the relics from earlier in the act, you can then put them into this altar together and then choose between one of 2 permanent bonuses, either 30% increased charm charges gained or 15% increased mana recovery from flasks. This choice can actually be swapped if you come back to this altar at any time. You aren't locked into it, so that's really good to be aware of here too. The next one is the reward for a side quest, Tradition's Toll. You get this when you are heading into Deshar as a zone, and you need to search the map for a green text interactable corpse. This will give you a letter to bring back to the caravan for another 2 weapon set passive skill points when you hand it in. And again, that's basically just 2 bonus permanent skill points with extra functionality. Then there is one more within Act 2 in the Spires of Deshar zone, the one with all these sort of interconnected towers and walkways. There will be a small area with a checkpoint called the Sisters of Garukhan's Shrine. Interact with the interactable part of the structure and you will gain a permanent 10% lightning resistance increase for your troubles here. With that then, we have Act 3 of the campaign starting off here. First up with the Sandsept Marsh. The first zone is the Auroch Campfire, which contains a guaranteed Lesser Jeweler's Orb inside of it to increase the amount of support gem slots on one skill gem from 2 up to 3, so this is a pretty big deal. In the Jungle Ruins zone, you want to search out for the optional boss, Mighty Silverfist. He usually sits in a fairly clear and open section of the map, but he will run out at you even from a short distance away if you come somewhat close to him. On death, he will drop another weapon set specialization manual for 2 more passive skill tree points. Within the Azek Bog zone that you will get to a little bit on, you will get a quest to come to us when you come close to it, but it is a side quest, so it is missable and optional. However, there is another optional boss in this zone, Ignigduck the Bog Witch. This fight is actually really quite awesome to be a part of, and on death she gives you another plus 30 to your maximum spirit. So now at 60 maximum spirit. Aside from this, there is a side quest that you will get while progressing to look for the source of the poison. This will take you through to the Venom Crypt subzone, and if you go down here and find the Venom Vial within it, you can then deliver it back to the encampment and receive 1 of 3 permanent buffs. This choice is permanent. Once you select it, it cannot be undone, so definitely take a moment to think about it before you make your choice. The options here then are 25% increased stun threshold for you, 30% increased elemental ailment threshold for you, or 25% increased mana regeneration rate. Past this, and while you are heading through Jakani's Mechanarium, there will be a number of optional soul core opening doors, one of which will bring you to the optional boss, Blackjaw, who you can kill, and on first death he will actually drop you an item that you can consume for a permanent 10% increase to your fire resistance, rounding out that trio of resistance increases. Further into Act 3, there will be an optional zone that you'll be able to see on your map, the Molten Vault. The entire objective of this location is to find the optional boss at the end of it, Mektul the Forge Master. This again is another really cool fight inside, and after you kill him, you can go back to the encampment and unlock the Reforging Bench. You can use this to take 3 similar items, smash them together, and make it into a brand new item of the same type, a recycling machine, essentially. Then as you are progressing through the final areas of Act 3, once you reach Utzal in this zone, and in the Agarat zone that follows it as well, there is a random chance for enemies to drop a quest item for you called the Sacrificial Heart. You can then take this up to the Agarat itself and search this zone for a sacrificial altar. Slot the heart in where it belongs up here, pick up the Ritual Dagger quest item, and then stab the heart with it by interacting with it, and you get 2 weapon set passive skill points again, which just essentially means once more just 2 more bonus skill points for you to take with you permanently. Those are all of the permanent sort of bonuses or unlocks that you can get from optional bosses or quests along your first journey through the campaign. But you may be wondering, what about cruel difficulty? Because you have to do the first 3 acts once again. So, do the cruel versions of the acts give more of these bonuses when you go through the campaign a second time? The answer is actually yes, they pretty much do. For the most part, it is actually the exact same bonuses from the exact same sources as the original 3 acts. So if you want the general answer, just repeat all the things I've already told you to do on this list, but again in cruel difficulty. For example, Bera of the Rotten Pack in cruel just gives another 10% cold resistance permanent increase. The exceptions to this then, however, in Act 1 are that the King in the Mists boss does not give you more bonus maximum spirit in cruel difficulty, so that does not an upgrade you can get in Act 1, cross that off your list. You can't find the blacksmithing tools a second time for clearly obvious reasons, so cross that one off your list too, and Candlemas the Living Right in instead of giving another plus 20 maximum life in Cruel, will instead give you 8% increased maximum life, so a proper life scalar multiplicatively. So that's very actually important to not miss here. In Act 2 on Cruel difficulty then, it's actually the exact same list of things to do as it is on normal difficulty, and the bonuses that you get are completely the same as well, so there's not actually much to say for that. As for Act 3 though, on Cruel difficulty, things do swap up a little bit more here. Specifically, the Bog Witch boss now gives you plus 40 maximum spirit instead of plus 30. This sets your full maximum spirit to 100, the proper cap, at least before equipment of course, if you have gotten the prior unlocks too. The Venom Crypt's quest that lets you choose one of the 3 permanent upgrades we talked about before will also offer different rewards here too, with the choices being between 10% chaos resistance increase, plus 5 to all attributes, or 15% reduced slowing potency of debuffs against you. Again, this is a permanent decision, so think carefully which one you want most for your character. The only other change for Act 3 is of course you cannot unlock Reforging again, so the Molten Vault's boss does not drop you a permanent upgrade as a result of this. Everything else, however, matches the exact same activities and rewards from base difficulty Act 3. And that pretty much covers it then, everyone. All of the permanent character upgrades that you can get from optional quests, bosses, or general activities along the way through the base campaign, as well as changes and additions to this that come from the Cruel difficulty versions as well. The difference between a character with none of these upgrades and all of these upgrades is actually quite potentially significant, especially things like the bonus spirit, and especially early on where something like 2 skill points can actually make a surprising amount of difference too. And while most players will realistically have gotten at least some of these things just sort of collaterally from progressing the story and walking past them, this did feel like a sort of important thing to talk about to help you make sure that you hit all of them, because they are permanent character buffs, and it's important to make sure that you aren't any weaker than intended, really. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.